disability around the world and across Africa. And today is a special webinar. We've got 3 speakers. And so we've got Professor Karl Peterlini, and you've got Elisabeth Rinne and Rosemarie Schoeffmann. And we welcome you to Global Peace Studies, and we welcome everybody who is on this call today. We're going to do it a bit differently today without the reading and the anthem, because also I think I might be running out of power because I've been traveling, and so but I'm okay. I'm okay. We traveled the whole night, but this is fine. And so we are going to, because we're beginning our international peace conference, Pan-African conference tomorrow morning. So you are welcome to join us, of course, online. That will be on the 27th. Tomorrow we will not be online. So I would like now to ask Karl, if you could please introduce the other speakers, and I will ask one of them to also introduce you just for one minute or so.
Okay. I think my colleagues can introduce them for themselves. You have already mentioned my name. It's Karl Peterlini. I'm coming from Italy in the northern part. I'm German speaking from the first language, and Italian too. I'm not so well in English, but you will hear it, and I hope you can. I can make it clear what I have to say. My colleague, yes, I'm professor here at Klagenfurt University in Austria. It's a small university. I show later in the presentation some picture where the area is, where we are working. And I think this is enough. My professorship is for general pedagogy and intercultural diversity education. And I think this is enough. And maybe, Elisabeth, it's much more nice if you present yourself.
Thank you.
Yes, Karl. So hello everybody, we're glad to be here. My name is Elisabeth and I have the pleasure to be working at the University of Citizenship Education, where Peterlini is the chairholder. And I came to work on the chair because I studied in the university program of Citizenship Education at Klagenfurt University, which you will hear a little bit more about in some minutes, I'm sure. And it really is a great opportunity. It's very interesting to put the things that we have learned and thought and discussed about theoretically into some sort of practice within the projects of the university. And over here, I'm also a school teacher. So in the background, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Nice to meet you.
Then I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Rosie Schoeffmann. I currently work as a university assistant at the Department of Education and Science in Klagenfurt. I'm also a teacher by training in the MA program for Global Citizenship Education, and now I'm working in the field of peace studies and peace education. But before my university life, I was social work for 10 years, so I have different fields of experience I can also share with you today in both to discussion and to getting to know the network.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you, Rosie. And so now please feel free to share screen if you want, and so we'll listen to you for like one discussion sessions. Thank you so much.
You have to unmute yourself.
It must work now, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yes.
A little bit of so see the presentation. Okay.
Yes.
Firstly, thank you very much again for this great opportunity to speak to you and to this excellent network from a small university in Austria. It's the University of Klagenfurt in Carinthia. You see the red field there where we stay. Is a region between Austria, Italy, and Slovenia in the so-called Adriatic area. And this area has been the scene of terrible wars in the past, and also long-lasting ethnic and ideological conflicts, in some cases right up to the present day. At the same time, it is an area in which people have rich experiences in transcending such divisions and learning to reconcile with the past and with each other. Today, Carinthia and the region we are working is a space that sees itself as transnational, already with the constant possibility of nationalistic backlashes and new divisions, of course. For this reason, dialogue across national, but also social and economic borders is very important to us. What we are talking about today is our central focus in research and teaching, namely diversity awareness, global learning, global citizenship education, and peace education. One of our core projects in this field is the University Master Program on global citizenship education, awarded 2 years ago by the Global Education Network Genie. Now the 4th course is to be started, so it's always going on. This course, every 3 years we do a new course. And other important steps for us were the recognition of the UNESCO chair on global citizenship education, culture of diversity and peace in 2020. You can scan maybe the QR code for reach the website, but we can also put the link in the chat after the presentation if someone is interested. The main project of the chair is the Global Campus Online, in short GLOCO, which my colleague Elisabeth will be talking about later more precisely. This all is possible due to the pioneering work of academics here in Klagenfurt, especially at the Center of Peace Research and Peace Education at our university, represented today by my other colleague, Rosemarie. Speaking now about global citizenship education, I can hardly avoid, of course, to repeat what you may know better than me, because you are exactly this field. So let me start with two personal experiences. One personal experience at the last year and two reflection I did. Together with an expert in human rights, I was appointed to represent Austria at the UNESCO Intergovernmental Meeting in Paris from July 2023. The aim was quite important, namely the adoption of the updated version of the so-called 1974 recommendation. In the full wording, the recommendation concerning education for international understanding, cooperation, and peace education related to human rights and fundamental freedoms from 1974. It is considered a fundamental document for educational approaches inspired by changing the world for the better. The meeting was preceded by an almost 2-year consultation phase. Then in Paris, the paper was fine-tuned in passionate debates, often to hinder weakenings in human rights, and sometimes also in the order to stylistic issues to make it sound better. New concepts such as transcultural approach in education and the protection of people from sexualized violence and discrimination were difficult to integrate in the text, but in total at the end it was possible to adopt a somewhat engaged document. Why I'm describing this in such detail? There are two reasons. The first one is about the integration of global citizenship education in this recommendation, because GCED was not developed at 1974 when the first recommendation was written. Russia in particular, but also other authoritarian states, put a massive resistance every time this concept was mentioned. The tries to allow the introduction of global citizenship education into the recommendation. It is thanks to the efforts of the European countries, Canada, and some African and Asian countries. Finally, the global citizenship education is consistently mentioned together with education for sustainable development in the paper, and finally even appears in the long title of the document, of the recommendation. You can read it for yourself. It's recommendation now, the new title, on education for peace and human rights, international understanding, cooperation, fundamental freedoms, global citizenship education, and sustainable development. You see here the different languages in which the recommendation was adopted. The second reason why I speak about that is more uncomfortable from a so-called Western point of view. I experience the whole negotiation as an enactment of the schizophrenia of our world. We were discussing the revision of a paper that has been around with marvelous intentions for 39 years. If even a fraction of it had become a reality, there would have been no need for a revision, because we would have a world at peace in which all states work together to improve people's lives and preserve the state of the planet. Instead, we sat together again to haggle over individual words, stylistic questions, while outside the conference and the meeting, the war continues and in some cases worsens. We see it all over the world, while outside social and global inequality is growing, while entire species and habitats disappear, and climate change threatens the future of generations to come. What was also the point of looking for nice words for a new recommendation if the old one had not been taken into account? So was it ultimately once again just about improving the world on paper, while economic, social, and global inequalities remain untouched? On paper, global citizenship education is a very high-ranked educational concept. UNESCO defines it as the answer to global challenges. The quote here at the screen: while the world may be increasingly interconnected, human rights violations, inequality, and poverty still threaten peace and sustainability. Global citizenship education, GCED, is UNESCO's response to these challenges. It works by empowering learners of all ages to understand that these are global, not local issues, and to become active promoters of more peaceful, tolerant, inclusive, secure, and sustainable societies. The gap between such high ambitions and the lack of concretization is in some way inherent. Every one of the three terms composing GCED is ambivalent. What does global mean? Does it mean the cosmopolitism of the fittest, like Walter Mignolo is criticizing the only economic and capitalistic idea of the global? Or does global involve a sense of planetary responsibility and solidarity between people and towards the nature? And second, what does citizenship mean? Is it the C one in the global, in the GCED? Is it the for many people exclusive and divisive national citizenship, or an inclusive urban or civic citizenship undermining the national divisions? And finally, which education we are speaking about in the context of GCED? The hierarchic concept of education, which often privileges the privileged, or an emancipatory and empowering one? An attempt to clear up such questions is the following analytical frame by Vanessa Andreotti. You may know it, which distinguishes between a soft approach to GCED and a critical one. In dealing with inequalities, while, for example, soft GCED would emphasize help for the discriminated, while critical GCED would call for fighting alongside the oppressed. Soft GCED emphasizes that everyone should make their own contribution to protecting the environment and climate, reflect on their own consumption, and also support appropriate initiatives and policies. Critical GCED, on the other hand, manifests itself in political commitment against climate damaging policies and economics. So it's a more doing for yourself, trying for yourself, or fighting socially and politically. Such a clear distinction between the two concepts or the two versions of global citizenship education is probably mixed for most of the actors in their real engagement. It's very seldom that someone is only soft or only critical. There will be mixed in the reality. Maybe for this reason, Andreotti is proposing a third approach, in some way bringing together and overcoming the soft and the critical versions of GCED. And she calls it GCED otherwise. GCED otherwise focuses on the complexity of the challenges to which global citizenship education must find answers or should find answers. The approach emerged from the collaboration with indigenous communities in Canada and South America in trying to decolonize the dominant Western thinking. They discovered that colonial structures are also present in the colonial approaches like global citizenship education. So global citizenship education is not preserved to be or to follow colonial structures itself. So they realized that colonization was and is not only the subjugation of certain human groups by other human groups. It's that, but not only that, but the subjugation of the earth is a fundamental pattern of action in the mode of coloniality, or vice versa. The idea that we are separate from the earth and can act as independent individuals is at the root of the subordination of the rights, needs, and dignity of everything that is defined different. The pioneer of global citizenship, of the idea of a planetary home or homeland, Edgar Morin, the French philosopher, links the decolonization of belonging, rights, and duties with a decolonization of the human relationship to the earth as Gaia, which can no longer be treated like an object. We can read it together. We have transformed. It's a quote by Edgar Morin. We have transformed the earth, domesticated its vegetal surfaces, and gained mastery over its animals. We are not for all that masters of the cosmos, not even of the earth. Our technical power, thought, and consciousness must henceforth be devoted to fitting up, improving, and understanding, not to mastering. We must learn to be there on the planet, to be, to live, to share, to communicate, and commune with one another. Self-enclosed cultures always knew and taught that wisdom. Following from this, Andreotti and her colleague Stein distinguish an education for mastery, which can also be understood as education for conquest, from an education for the depth. In their draft for GCED otherwise. We can also read it together. Some central concepts here on this slide. This education for depth invites learners as well as teachers to dive into the complexities, contradictions, and complicities that characterize the modern colonial system as we know it, so that we might begin to sense the limits of the system alongside its gifts and confront the difficulties of imagining and enacting something otherwise. Offers us a reminder of our responsibilities to denaturalize, interrupt, and ultimately disinvest from this system if we wish to honor our metabolic entanglement with everyone and everything. Seeks to prepare learners with the stamina and the disposition to be able to hold complexities, contradictions, and complicities of ourselves and the world, rather than try to either repress or immediately resolve it. Entails not just the intellectual work of critique, but also affective and relational work that is often sidelined or even dismissed and delegitimized within institutions that are focused on providing education for mastery. And it can be understood as ego disarming, inviting people into a space of humility, maturity, sobriety, and responsibility. Such an approach requires a humble, mature, thoughtful, and responsible attitude in dealing with the world and the knowledge which is required for that. To make it short, if education should really change the world as it's always expected in the paper, which want to make better the world on paper, then we have to change before our concepts of education itself. Here only some sketches of what I'm meaning, speaking from changing education, also in the perspective of global citizenship education, what could be helpful, flattening hierarchies in the teaching learning process in favor of participatory approaches, by relationship and empathy versus mastery and conquest of knowledge, but also of learning and teaching in this dynamics, learning by doing and reflecting on experiences in relation to the subject of learning, unsharpening and weakening of binary divisions of knowledge and worldviews, what is right, what is wrong. We often divide it in a too clear and fast way, and shaping out or fading out the ambivalences and the ambiguities of the reality, reflecting divisive and post-colonial colonial orders which generate inequity,
and justice, like nationality, color, gender, socioeconomic status, access to the public, relating to the others and exploring their own conditions, and relating to the world, exploring it in their own life world and reflecting in them. Global citizenship education. Oh, I would have global citizenship education in such a perspective can be described as a pedagogical concept to bring colonial, it means also dominant, divisions into a critical and empathetic dialogue that does not rely only on the intellectual and rational transfer of knowledge, but also demands and enables people to relate to each other across divisions. So finally, we can summarize the potentials of global citizenship education, which could help to individuate common denominators between GCED and peace education. And in this perspective, we can understand GCED as an integrative approach of political education, peace education, and global learning, considering intercultural pedagogics and education for sustainable development, dealing with epistemic violence and subtle structures of injustice, exclusion, and inequity, also in societies where war is absent, also in the absence of war, which is not peace in the meaning of just societies, but more a peace without peace, like Martin Luther King has it once described. Overcoming methodological nationalism, a worldview that regards everything through the national lens, and a planetary oriented education for global responsibility, and a cosmopolitan spin to contribute to global justice. A post-colonial critical approach with a planetary consciousness and dealing with coloniality as result and long-standing heritage of colonialism. This distinction is, it seems important to me. Colonialism may be past. Coloniality is still present and long-standing. The consisting structures of exploitation between North-South, and not only as geographical terms, there is also a global South in the North and a global North in the South. Reflection of one's own often privileged living conditions and the imperial mode of living of the West. And finally, a pedagogical contribution to a major social ecological transformation of society in order to reach peace between humans, but also between humans and nature and humans and the earth itself. Thank you very much for your attention till now. And with this, I hand over to Rosemarie for her part of our speech. But I think this Rosemarie has to share the screen for herself. So I would stop it here and give you, Rosemarie, also the opportunity to, so you can move your slides for yourself.
Thank you, Hans-Karl. I hope everyone can see my slides now, or it's the same presentation, but I can move them for myself. I'm now shifting perspectives from this global approach more to a local one, and then in the final part come back to a global perspective. So I would first briefly talk about the Center for Peace Education, a few examples of the area. I give you a short introduction about some issues in the area we live in, and then I would summarize that in a peace education otherwise. Janet wrote in the chat that you know Werner Wintersteiner. He actually founded the Center for Peace Research and Peace Education. And also in preparation for this talk, I read a few articles about the foundation of the center. And in one of his articles, he quotes Nicholas Murray Butler, where he says the whole history of civilization can be written and only written in terms of ideas, building themselves into institutions. And that's more or less what Werner and many more did with the Center of Peace Research and Peace Education at the University of Klagenfurt. So basically this center, or still the foundation, was created in 2005. Werner Wintersteiner was a professor for German didactics back at this point. And it really started as an initiative from below. They didn't have any funding. And the center is still up and running, and we are now located at the Department of Educational Sciences. And we have we are like 3 researchers, I would say 3 to 4 researchers working there, because also Karl is partly in 2 areas involved. And we are offering transdisciplinary peace studies. A colleague of mine is focusing on epistemic and social foundations of violent conflicts, Claudia Brunner. But we have a very broad understanding of politics and violence, and study that from a very multidisciplinary point of view. And we have a focus on the cultural approach on peace studies. So in my former training, I did teacher training, so I'm very much into the educational part. And another colleague of mine is focusing on conviviality, so the foundations of a peaceful way of living together on every level, in different communities to country level. So it's on different layers. That's her focus. So this is now our focus more or less in the Department of Educational Sciences. And I just briefly want to mention that it's a very special location, because we offer peace and conflict studies or conflict education mainly for the students of the educational department, but for the whole university as well. And they can either do a minor subject on peace and conflict education, or have a certificate in peace and conflict education. And I just wrote some of the foci we have on the slide. So it's, again, depending on the subject the students, on the major subject the students focus on, they can have different approaches and views. And I also want to briefly show you the courses we offer during the summer semester, because I think in the preparation for this talk, I was thinking about, okay, what should my contribution of peace education and global citizenship education, what is something I can share, we can share, and maybe discuss later. And I brought more or less along examples of practices I encountered during my time at university and during my professional career before, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion. So the courses during the summer semester, either they focus on conflicts, it's in German, because you cannot print out the English version as a whole, but I can translate. And it's also the university as a as a room or as a place for peace building. We have global citizenship or education, of course, but also focusing on an Eastern European perspective. We have civil conflict management, and we also have the theater of the, Augusto Boal's theater, also put into practice with the students. So it's very different layers and levels we focus on. I again want to point out the location. So we are located in the south of Austria and Carinthia, which is the border region to Italy and Slovenia, and which is a very, as Karl also mentioned before, an area which is prone to many different conflicts. There was conflicts in World War I and II, It was a former Yugoslavia, which also had the border to then, and then the new state Slovenia arose, and during the First World War, the Slovene minority in Carinthia was oppressed and still is very much, I would say, left out in public discourse, more or less, because Slovenian is the second language in Carinthia, but it's still very marginalized. And yeah, even though it's also an official language in official documents. So Werner Wintersteiner and many of his colleagues, he very much focused on this Adriatic region, this very conflict-prone area of borderlands, I would say, and cross-border relations between Austria, Italy, and Slovenia, and about different initiatives built in schools, at universities, in communities, in the regions and cities. Yeah, basically more or less that. And very many questions of interculturality and multilingualism arise in this context, like which languages are spoken, which history and events are remembered, and which histories and events are not being mentioned in public discourse. And this is still going on as I speak. So, and therefore I brought two examples of, I would say, memory culture in Carinthia, of, I would say, the main discourse, and how people try to work with that, I would say, hegemonic discourse, and try to implement different approaches, which also should give impetus for a peace culture, I would say, in the region. So the first example is the Domplatz, which is it's just a common ground in Klagenfurt. This is the main capital of Carinthia. I think one of you has the mic on, and I can hear another speaker. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think now it's better. Yeah. So this is the Domplatz, which is located in Klagenfurt, and there is this like place where the people who were got killed during the Second World War are commemorated, but it's from a very German nationalistic point of view. So just the people basically from this angle, they're commemorated from this angle. And there has been an initiative for a few years to change that, and to really change the focus and also the discourse of remembering and remembrance. And each year this initiative Domplatz, which you can also see in Slovene here on my slides, they organize an event, and last year they also did a competition where different artists created different monuments, and or had like suggestions for monuments where also different perspectives get commemorated. So I just brought like 2 slides for you to have a look, where also marginalized views are commemorated, and people who fought the Nazi Germany are commemorated, and their views are valued. This is the second slide. So there are different examples where also like the names of the victims of both sides are stated, and there is also this door, which is in, I think it's a door of one entrance door of a concentration camp, and it's also like a suggestion to work with that. So this is the Domplatz initiative, which is a very good example how different marginalized perspectives can come back, I would say, in a collective memory through very small initiatives. And my second example is an artistic project. And I saw Rosalia Kopeinik, who is one of the people behind that project. She also joined this meeting today. I'm very glad. So maybe we can talk about this later in more detail. It's called showrooms or Schauräume in German. And it's an initiative since 2011, and it puts marginalized views and social issues at the center in a very performative style. So basically showrooms work with vacant business premises and put different projects and activities there. And they also work as also global citizenship, Karl mentioned before, on very different levels. So they work on a global level, on a local level, on a regional level. So, and I have one example of a very local level, or in another city in Carinthia, Villach, where they had like biographical art path where different people from different social contexts led small groups through the city and showed them their perspectives and their histories of the city. And they also renamed places, because place names are also like very much focused in common culture, and they renamed them as, for example, the place of their aunt, or the place of commemorating their dead, or something happened there, which I find really interesting. And I brought you two photographs of one of the books they published. So this is like this is the Leiningengasse, is the official name of this street. And then the person who led this tour, she renamed it into Colleagues Street, which is her perspective on that street or on that place in Villach. So these are two examples of how you also can integrate marginalized views into memory. And this brings me to my examples bring me to the main focus of my research is decolonial theory and peace education, and there has been very much discourse and very many publications in German and also Anglophone discourse during the last years. Also Karl mentioned Global Citizenship Education Otherwise by Vanessa Andriotti, and also a colleague of mine in Germany, Cora Peace, focuses very much on this very critical approach of peace studies. These are just two examples, and I want to give you 5 claims, I would say, at the end of my talk about peace education otherwise. So this otherwise comes from this global citizenship education otherwise. And I want to mention the decolonial approach again. In German context and in German discourse, there is this term Haltung, which translates in a way of thinking and approaching certain issues. But it also can mean it also means posture in German. So it has these two meanings. It's either a perspective on a certain issue, or a posture, how I position myself. And this very much reflects also the examples I brought before, that it focuses on the perspectives and points of views of those whose very existence is questioned and produced as dispensable and insignificant. So it really focuses on marginalized views, and it tries to put them in the discourse, but it also focuses on many different forms of life. So it's not just put humans at the center, but also focuses on different species. The second claim, they are all from an article of 2 colleagues of mine, Juliana Krom and Christiana Pauls, are braver spaces, a concept I worked in my pedagogical practice. So it's about dealing with insecurity and doubt. And the question would be if there could be a safe space. And it acknowledges different vulnerabilities and their implications of learners and educators. So learners and also educators in a space have different positions, and they position themselves differently. And also what happens in that space has an impact on how these people can enter or use spaces. So one of my claims and what I do in my pedagogical work is when I, for example, teach a class on racism or decolonial theory, I also create a shared understanding of rules in these spaces that people can feel, I would say, not safe, but braver to argue and share their ideas in a very shared context, and everyone can include what they need in order to participate in a certain context. The third point is accountability, that which is very important to me because it's a view or a perspective on how to deal with mistakes. And it's not about that they're made, but it's about taking responsibility. That you really take responsibility on of your actions, what you do, and this at different levels, I would say, at an intellectual, affective, relational. It basically consists of very different levels, and I just have two examples. For example, on the relational levels, in the context of peace education, it would mean the relations between marginalized groups and I would say, yeah, more or less homogeneous groups or between humans and non-human beings. And on an ecological level, especially in the light of the global climate crisis, it also means in a way complicity with nature, to be complicit with nature and to really try to make things. They can also result from the unconscious reproduction of sexist and racist knowledge. But this can also be regarded as a product of this modern and colonial socialization, which is deeply embedded in us. And so in this way, when you don't reflect these, hidden colonial continuities can continue and repeat themselves, even though you are not aware of that. And in education, it's more or less about that errors are not something that you avoid, but it's a learning resource. So when I, for example, have stereotypes in mind, I can work with them and look at them and say, okay, where are you coming from? Which kind of structure of society do we represent, and then question and reflect on that and not avoid them because they are here anyway and they reflect themselves again in societal structure. So this is just put it very simply, but I think this is one of my main approaches. And for the last part, it's about radical hope. I think this is something which kind of unites the work we do, or I hope you see it that way, that it's continuous work to change this system, this colonial system, but it's also a way of humility that to really acknowledge that there have been very many people who fought this fight before us and who have always been resistant, and to really acknowledge their practices. And finally taking responsibility and working on it together. And I think this is a good last word to hand over to Elisabeth, because the global campus network is something we try to create a network to work together, maybe also in the light of radical hope. Thank you very much for your attention so far. And I now stop my presentation and hand over to Elisabeth.
There was a mistake. Hello, everyone. I actually wanted to start it from my slide, but now I started it from the first slide. So I will try to correct that. Okay, here we are. So thanks very much, Hans, Karl, and Rosemarie for these very, very great presentations. And now I have the pleasure to tell you a little bit about a concrete project that we are implementing at the UNESCO chair, where also the university program that you heard about in Hans Karl's presentation has its home. And I will try to go through it in the depth that it requires, but rather quickly, so we still have time for any possible questions and discussions about all that we have heard until now. So the Global Campus Online project is one of the two main projects of the Global Citizenship, of the UNESCO Chair of Global Citizenship Education. And it is a practical approach to global citizenship and to global citizenship education. And talking about it more concretely, it is an international network that we have established over the course of the last 2 years. And right now, over 80 participants.
Let's see, today's Wednesday.
I'm sorry, may I ask to mute the mic? Thank you very much. A network with over 80 participants, and these participants are all from different professional contexts. They are researchers, they are activists, they are NGO workers, but they all share a common interest in topics such as global citizenship education, global justice, sustainability, diversity, human rights, and so forth. And the participants that are active in this network are currently from 17 different countries and 4 different continents. And we bring them together in monthly meetings. And in these meetings, the first and foremost aim is just to create a space for exchange and for discussing pressing issues that are a shared concern of all these very diverse people and participants. And we try to give impulses for that, but by inviting experts that give short impulse lectures on various topics, the topics that I have mentioned before that are shared interests of the people in this network. And also the network members themselves can present projects that they are working on. Sometimes it's research that they are doing or a thesis they're writing, but also we are encouraging the development of very concrete, we call them local best practice projects. So these projects are then presented and in turn discussed and feedbacked by the rest of the network. And the topics that come up, as well as in the expert talks, as well as in the project presentations, are quite a big range of topics that fall under the concerns of the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as the global citizenship education. And examples for that is like issues related to gender, to climate justice, to quality of education, to peace education, to globalization, and to decoloniality. The project presentations are quite a big and important cornerstone of these meetings. So different network members there's no obligation for that, but they can present projects that they are working on, small initiatives, and then they will receive feedback from the other members. And also we have already seen that actually collaborations have formed between different network members that haven't known each other before. Also, the UNESCO chair and the local project team is trying to do their best to support the implementation of these projects by also providing feedback, by providing resources, and also by providing financial support in some cases. Yeah, and we are also an important aspect of the global campus is that we are trying to apply participatory methods by listening to our participants, what they would have liked to have implemented in the network meetings, what they would like to focus on, provide them online spaces where they can reflect together, and also by providing structures where the fruit of all this work, of the project work, of the reflections that happen within the meetings can be put together in publications and handbooks and other forms of dissemination. Our aim with this work is overall to discuss globally relevant problems from different local perspectives. So the problems that we have heard before, and like by bringing together network members and participants from different contexts, they all provide their unique perspectives on these issues. And then in consequence to imagine transdisciplinary and transnational solution approaches. Therefore, we aim to connect the local and the global perspective, and therefore create something that we call the global perspective. We also aim to change the perspective away from a Eurocentristic and neo-colonial domination of the discourse towards a multi-perspectivist approach, which we have already also heard about, is an important perspective and aim of global citizenship education in general. And by providing this continuous space, we also try to inspire and support learning processes of the participants and encourage them to share the perspectives within the network and beyond the network. And we also want to actively support practical solution approaches and locally relevant project ideas by giving a space to the mentioned best practice visual representation of the network. So we have a network with different clusters of participants. Sometimes there's just one participant from a local region. Sometimes it's a group that is participating together, that are regularly meeting with each other and talk about their work, about their ideas, about different things. And then also normally it happens that a local, like a singular person or a local group will bring an initiative to the global campus, a local best practice project that is then together reflected and feedbacked, and sometimes collaborations and corporations form. Also, it is a great opportunity for the other participants to hear about locally specific issues and then to share how these issues come into play or like manifest themselves in their specific context and how they would approach such an issue. So it could be the issue of the lack of quality education, of poverty, of gender discrimination, which really we can see in all societies, but on different levels and different ways and with different approaches. So these projects are like I would say the fruitful outcome of the global campus online and the space that we have created there for this exchange. And it is also like very actively taken upon by the participants, because so far 14 projects have been presented in the meetings and 8 projects have already been implemented, and all of them with success. And these projects are also only like projects for the sake of like just doing something and then like talking about it. Of course, that is very important, but we also see them as global citizenship education put into practice, because they become global citizenship education not by acting just locally and tackling something locally, but by reflecting it in a global community and to have this joint global reflection. Also, we see the project as a practice of global citizenship education otherwise, because the aim and the focus is not on imposing solution approaches from outside, but instead active listening within this community, learning from each other, and then supporting where it is necessary and desired. Also, we are trying to contribute to a culture of peace by fostering an ongoing dialogue between or within a very diverse community, and by providing a critical and secure learning space. So maybe like we have heard before, it is not a complete safe space, but we are trying to to open a place also with these common rules and where participants know they can explore different ideas and bring in different perspectives. And now I want to to end this. I want to talk about three of these best practice projects that have emerged within the Global Campus within the last year. And to talk a little bit about how they relate to the ideas of global citizenship education and critical global citizenship education and also peace education. So one project has been by the Climate Action Now network that is located in South Tyrol, Italy, and they have called it Virtual Teach-ins on Climate Justice, where they have started, or they are in the process of starting, an online series of so-called teach-ins, so lectures and workshops on the issue of global climate justice. So they specifically want to focus on how the climate change is, or the CO2 emissions are mainly produced in countries of the global north, whereas countries of the global south overproportionally have to deal with the consequences of climate change. And it is also an example for transnational collaboration that has formed within the Global Campus, because this activist group have actively sought out people from, experts and scholars from the Global South that they have come to know within this network to get them as presenters within these teach-ins. So that is an example of how that collaboration has come to take place. Then another project that has been very interesting has been Dialogues on Play-Based Education. It has also been an online project, online lecture. We can also see here that there's a affinity for these online formats, of course, because first, after the pandemic, I think we have all become more used to collaborating and doing more work online. And also when we are talking about global collaborations and how we can work together globally and share ideas globally, we are very much dependent on these online spaces. And yeah, they are very fruitful in that sense. So within these dialogues of play-based educations, also members that have gotten to know each other within the Global Campus Network, which has been academics and NGO workers, all in South Africa, but in different cities, have come together to talk about and to bring experts in, and also to develop guidelines for how education, especially early childhood education, can be bettered and can be improved in South Africa specifically, and how they can incorporate more play-based education and what kind of advantages that poses. And lastly, there was a group of students and activists from Austria and Hungary that have organized a festival in Udvar, which is a region, a municipal community in the south of Hungary. And they have organized the festival, and I will tell you a little bit more about the background of that, and then we will see a video to conclude this presentation. So the Art Festival in Hungary can be seen as a concrete example of peace building and education through cultural exchange and celebration. The background of this is that it was a cultural festival where they aimed to connect the Sinti and Roma, that are an ethnic minority in Hungary, with the rest of the population, and to celebrate their culture. And to briefly touch upon the situation of the Sinti and Roma in Hungary, they are, as I mentioned, an ethnic minority, but they are native in Hungary since the 16th century. They have a very rich own culture, but today the percentage in the population is not quite known and is disputed due to their assimilation and the different criteria and how to count them. And also many of them don't feel comfortable by claiming their heritage because of issues of discriminations by the rest of the society. Also, many of them have adopted the Hungarian as the main language, although Romani and other languages are still spoken also in communities. And as I mentioned briefly, they are constant subject to discrimination, more or less like more constantly since the beginning of the 20th century, in like all parts of society, in the educational system, in work, and they also have a history of being forced to resettle. And during the Second World War, they were also deported to concentration camps. Nowadays, there are many stigmata and prejudices against them. And what this project has aimed and also achieved was to not highlight these issues so much in this particular case, but highlight the beautiful parts of Romani culture and the strength, and also bring together people from the Sinti and Roma and the rest of the community to kind of bridge this gap that is existing in society and celebrate together. And now I would like to give you a brief insight by courtesy of the project team of how that has looked like. So I will share a video with you.
Elisabeth got sound. I can only
Just a
see
second.
pictures. All right.
You cannot hear the sound?
If no, maybe try to share the sound. Right.
That's a shame. Yes, I will try that.
Right, excellent.
Because there is music in the background and it's quite beautiful. Thank you
see.
for
Yeah.
something.
Thank you.
Let's see. Does anyone know how I can manage those options?
Somewhere maybe there is why you.
I have it.
You show. Okay, great.
Yes. So I will just pick up from where it is, and you will hear the rest of the music now.
Great.
Gondoljunk a feketeket, menekülik, de a lábam mozdulatlan a kőbe köt. Tudom, ez csak álom. Beszélő hold és csillag, titkaikat üzenik, virágszírom színű vihar, tépi múltam bűneit. Hideg tűz és tündérmese, engem nem találom rég, hamis szerelem vagy álom, de kérlek maradj még. Hideg tűz és tündérmese, engem nem találom rég, hamis szerelem vagy álom, de kérlek maradj még. Vagyok anya, párnára hajtom fejem, teresszel sötéték, mingatja a szemem. Álmos vagyok anya, párnára hajtom fejem, teresszel sötéték, Rinne jag semmer.
Hey, thank you very much. That concludes my presentation. And
thank you very much indeed. Excellent. Thank you so much indeed for your presentations, and we feel now refreshed after this video. And so this has been really a wonderful talk on the common denominators of global citizenship and peace education and how to put their aims into practice, and we have seen it. And so we thank you very much indeed. We thank, of course, as Karl Peterlini, who has talked about global citizenship education generally, and Elisabeth on global campus online, the GLOCO. And of course, Rosemarie, actually even on the radical hope, which I think needs to drive us as we build a peace around the world. So now I'd like to ask people to comment. I've seen lots of danke. And so we thank you very much indeed for this wonderful presentation. And so if you've got a question or comment, please feel free to ask or make your comment. You can ask anybody a question on their presentation. Yeah, I can see. Janet, are you raising your hand? No. Almost. All right. Okay, I see.
Hello. Oh,
yes, please.
Are you calling on me?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, George, and good luck with your conference and all the work that that entails. And I send you best wishes for it. A wonderful thing.
Thank you so much, Janet.
I wanted to start. I loved everything. It's so close to our work from the Peace Education Center at Teachers College. So we were working with Werner since 1999, Werner Wintersteiner, and from the URED example to, things keep changing, to figuring out his center, to founding it, and to see all the developments are so heartwarming. And all three of your presentations were so schön. So Dankeschön. And now my point I want to make especially focuses on what Hans Karl was saying, which was that it's so frustrating between the ideals on paper and the reality, making it reality. It's so difficult. And it's so disheartening and so much work. And yet I think the real value, we're always looking at end results in a way, and that diminishes the value of the process. And in my experience, the people who are deliberating to make these documents are changed forever and learn so much about conflict, negotiation, compromise, aspirations, and other people's, the insights into other people's worldviews and political positions. And when you learn all that, you're changed forever, and you have that to bring forward. And it's exponential. It's not just you, but everyone you touch thereafter, and every situation you bring this kind of experience of deliberation forward. And deliberation, you know, in peace education, we don't deliberate. We learn, we have dialogues, we discuss. But if you can get into the confinement of deliberations toward the purpose of producing a product as filled with compromise and disappointments as it is, you've nevertheless took a big step forward. And then, for example, the 1974 document, in the 90s, there was a big attempt to crush the breakthroughs of that document, not to bring it forward, but to crush them. And so we always can expect these backlashes, which are so painful and dispiriting. Nevertheless, like, I feel so elated. Education and global citizenship and global have developed from your presentations. You know, when we were making the International Institute on Peace Education, I've been involved since 1997. People came to find out what peace education was. They just were like, wow, I always felt this, but I didn't know anyone else in the world was working on it. And yet here you are, wow, with these, you know, multi-level programs from global deliberation to online to master's degree to writing and research. And, you know, it's just beautiful. So that's not much of a question, but I just wonder if you have any thoughts about dialogue, conflict resolution, deliberation, and reaching some kind of consensus. Anyway, that's what I spend a lot of time thinking about. So that's my invitation to respond to any of that. Thank you.
I'm very thankful for your passionate contribution and your feedback. I think we can't give up hope, the radical hope, Rosie, and it should be an unbreakable hope. And what we are doing here is the most important step, I think. Bring together our forces and exchange our experiences, share the frustrations, but also the small successes we may have. One step forward, two steps backwards, maybe, but always better than go only backwards. And so I think that I had this frustrating experience by working on this 1974 recommendation, but there are also steps forward in this recommendation, because that's the first time that a recommendation obliges the member states of UNESCO to do a mentoring and to give reports about the concretization. So maybe I think it will stay paper again, but something of this paper will also become concrete, and the rest we have to try, we have to do, and we don't should give up hope. Thank you very much.
Like to say, the member states are always last. You know, like you're pushing from the bottom up, and the member states, you know, are always last. Okay, thank you. Peter, are you going to call on people, or should I invite people to speak? Should I do that, or will you?
Oh,
anybody can do anything until George
and
says
Karl
something else.
Oh, yes.
So, okay, Kalawanga, Gel, Conwalda.
Yes. Thank you very much. I am Kalongel, and I'm joining from Ethiopia. I would like to thank the presenters. I thought he was a very informative presenter, mainly because I was also wondering about the nexus and the linkage between global citizenship education and peace education. And so I found it very useful in the sense that it highlights the connection and the linkage between the two. I also appreciate what George and his team is doing. I think I see potential avenues of collaboration between his organization and mine, because we also work on peace building. I am someone with an academic background, but also a practitioner. And so I see potential avenues for collaboration between his organization and mine. So once again, I thank you, the Gloco team, my friends and colleagues in Klagenfurt. I thank you very much for your presentation. I have a couple of questions. First, are we talking about a common denominator? Because from the way Karl presented, it looked like to me that peace education is kind of a subdomain of global citizenship education. So if we are talking about common denominators, then we are assuming that they are separate. But then if one is like part and parcel of the other, then I don't think we can discuss about overlappings and common denominators. And so are we talking about these two fields, namely global citizenship education and peace education, being separate and then having, you know, overlapping points? That's probably one area you could comment on. And Rosie was talking about peace research and peace education. And as we know, peace research is it's a very applied research, meaning the findings from the research are expected to be used in terms of addressing and resolving conflicts, mitigating conflicts, in terms of informing policy and so on. And so I was kind of thinking to what extent your research is informing informing policy making, or the practice, the actual practice of conflict resolution on the ground. Particularly because any kind of peace research is supposed to be somehow applicable. And I think one interesting thing that I heard today is the kind of conflicts which we are experiencing in Austria. I often check out this annual report of the Institute of Peace and Economics, and Austria is often mentioned as one of the most peaceful countries in the world. Wondering how you sort of see this annual report from the Institute of Peace and Economics. I mean, labeling Austria as one of the most, probably the third or the fourth peaceful country in the world. I mean, in the latest report that we've seen. And so, how do you sort of we are getting from this kind of institutes. Thank you very much.
Rosemarie, may you respond if you...
I can respond to the second part of the question. Thank you, Karl Wongel, for your comments and for your questions. I would first just quickly focus on the question about the Slovene minority and the Austrian majority. And the peace conflict report. I would say that Austria is a very peaceful country, and I think this report very much also reflects that, or like the in my opinion also the climate in society here. But of course there are conflicted areas of I would say dominance in common discourse, or as I pointed out with the issue of the Slovene minority in Carinthia, there has been very much work going on to kind of mitigate and resolve that conflict, and to bring together the different perspectives of the people in that area. And I would say that these contributions, also what Werner did and many others, even at the Department of Educational Science during the last 30 to 40 years, really put that into practice. And there has been a lot of going on for example, when I focus on languages, that also the Slovene language is taught in schools, for example, that these views are also represented in the public discourse. But there has been a lot of work of activists and educators in that area. And I think that very much contributes to that feeling of a society who can live together in a very peaceful way, I would say. But still, this work has to go on, and there are many different issues, as I mentioned, which still need to be tackled, I would say. And for the second question, to what extent does the research also goes back into society, I would say, or the findings. So the research at the center is very much focused on a cultural perspective, I would say, and I'm very much in peace education and on like a school level, how to, as Janet said before, how to deal with conflicts on a very common level, and apply these different findings in the settings the students or the pupils are located in, and also apply these findings in the context I mentioned before, in the minority and majority issue. How can the different perspectives still be besides each other, and even though there are conflicting perspectives? So I think this is one of the main issues we have. And yeah, and I could go into further detail, but I think I leave it with that and hand over to Hans Karl, because I think there was another question directed to you.
Yes, in short, thank you, Karl Wongel. Nice to see you here. I think we can see the political pedagogies, let us call them so, as competitors, or we see it as approaches from the different perspectives, but trying to go the same way and reach the same goal. And GCED is often seen as an umbrella term or an integrative approach for all other political pedagogies, like peace education. So, but it shouldn't be thought on as a dominant aspiration to be the dominant approach controlling or subjugating all the others. This would be a big mistake and a big failure also of global citizenship education. It would be the coloniality of global citizenship education, colonizing the other approaches. It's more not subjugating or the other approaches and not putting them apart, not overcoming them, but maybe make clear that all approaches are important, and global citizenship education does not mean to develop new content in competing or going in a competitive direction to the others, but only and not developing new subjects, but make clear that all topics and all subjects have a planetary and global dimension, and we should also think and see and reflect the global dimensions of all subjects and topics we deal with. This would be my understanding of global citizenship education. So working together with all approaches and bringing to sight, bringing to reflection the planetary dimensions of all issues we are dealing with.
Thank you so much indeed. Now I can see that Karl-Heinz has raised his hand, and I'm also aware that the time is not our best ally today. So Hans-Karl, if you could please also just make a short comment and maybe also thank our speakers also on our behalf, because you are the last speaker for today, as it were. Nice to see you, Hans-Karl. Karl-Heinz.
Okay, George, thank you very much.
Right.
So I have a question to the three wonderful persons from Kärnten, from Austria, from Klagenfurt. Ladies first, so I would like to ask Rosie, Elisabeth, and Hans-Karl. Peace education is a very important matter. There's no doubt. Studies and research projects and so on. My question is, are there also concrete action in Klagenfurt for the broad population, not only for the academic youth? I mentioned already 2 weeks ago here in this circle that we need urgently a basic democratic information and dialogue system, so that we discuss the important question when it comes to war and peace. The word peace is threatened by Ukrainian war, and we have to find a way for different information system. Okay, but my main question was, are there any activities in Klagenfurt and in Kärnten, in Carinthia, regarding the broad population? Or it's only in the university for the students? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Karl-Heinz. So I would say that there is one initiative by also not led, but a colleague of mine is involved in that. It's a youth parliament in Klagenfurt, where different students come together and can have a discourse with politicians. This is one of the projects, but this is also linked to university. And there are many teachers, and also I come from the NGO sector, so I worked in career orientation sector, which is very different, but there are many approaches focused on peace education there as well. But I would say like a broad initiative or something which really focuses on a broad spectrum of students and also of society. I would say that Klagenfurt or Carinthia lacks that in a way. There are very small initiatives focusing on different target groups. We organize a lot of different lectures. At the Peace Center, we organized a big conference where all the players of peace education came together in April, but to kind of strengthen that network and kind of work together. And there are many also online projects, for example, from the Friedensbüro Salzburg, where they put together a website, Why War, where they also focus on educators that they can implement that in schools. I would say that there are many different initiatives, but we lack that broad spectrum I think you were talking about. But this is my view. So Hans Karl, if you know another initiative or something, but this is just the circles I am involved in. Yeah.
No, I
Thank
think
you very much.
you have cleared it up very great. Thank you, Rosie.
Great. Thank you very much indeed, our speakers, Hans Karl, Elisabeth, Rinne, Rosemarie, Schoeffmann. We thank you very much for your presentation. And some people said we'd like to have your presentation. Please, if you can share it with us, that would be excellent. I thank everybody also on this call for your participation. We look forward to seeing you next week. And of course, also, also for the conference, I will also send you a link. So thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you very much to you and for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And we would be great if we can see you again in the Global Campus Online. We will allow us to invite you, and maybe you can also invite the great network you are representing, and we have known today. It was a great experience, see so many people working together, thinking together for changing something to the better.